Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Murray Kalis, who is known as the Jewish madman. Madman? Welcome, Murray. I'm excited to talk to you about, well, food and advertising, and food. So, was your specialty ads for food?
Uh, the area, what is called in advertising, is packaged goods, and from there, of course, I spread out. Particularly after I came out to LA to restaurants and fast food. So there's just a very wide range of experience. The I I actually started in the world of beer on a brand that was, believe it or not, um, fighting out for one or two with Budweiser, and it was called Schlitz beer. And I don't know if anyone ever remembers it these days, but we did a wonderful campaign and we used to go around the world because it was served in all kinds of places, primarily because it usually was served in army bases, which we had all around the world. So we used to go just everywhere to in Hong Kong and in Japan and in Scotland and England and Morocco, and all in the very early 70s. And then I got assigned to Kellogg's, which is, the cereal company, and they bought a they had a division called Mrs. Smith's Pies at the time, and they decided to introduce crepes. And they had both sweet and sour crepes, in other words, both are sweet and savory, you should say. At that time, people, you would think so, but in the early, it was probably about around 73 or 74, people hadn't had crepes. It just was unusual. It was like a new food, and there was even a chain that opened up that served crepes. And so when we did a focus group, what came back was that people all remembered the first time they ever had crepes. I could probably ask you that question, and you probably had crepes so often you don't remember. But people really recalled it because it was so different. And so I came up with a campaign where it would be usually a couple, and one of the spots was, it said we only ran into it's a set in Paris, and the woman is saying, she's saying, we only ran into the little cafe to get out of the rain, and then we discovered crepes. And then we cut to tight shot of the crepes, and it says, now Mrs. Smith brings you crepes, so delicious and sweet. You can have them for dessert, you can have them for dinner, and they'll be right in your freezer. And then we pull back from this tight to show the couple, and now instead of in the restaurant, they're in the kitchen at a table, and it says Mrs. Smith crepes, just like the first time.
Is this what advertising food really is about? Is about tapping in to people's food memories?
Often often it is. It's that wonderful taste, and sometimes it's a surprise. I mean, the thing I'm mostly working on now. So I'll flip from 1973 to 2024, and I'm working on TV spots for Dave's Hot Chicken, which is a new chain. It's only been in existence for about 6 years, but it really took off about 4 years ago. They had about, I think, one store, and then 2 years ago they had 50, and we're past 200 now.
Wow.
So it's very exciting. But the thing that we found when we looked at, people would be so excited by the taste that they would actually post their first taste. They'd heard about it, and they'd post they post their first taste on Instagram. So here I am from the 70s to the 2000s and finding these Instagram posts where people were saying, hey, I'm at Dave's Hot Chicken. I'm about to taste Dave's Hot Chicken for the first time. Let's see. And they're absolutely blown away. They sometimes their head goes back and they are really knocked out by it. And so I found a song, a song from 1962 by Etta James, and where she sings, why not? I know all these things, right? And she sings, something's got a hold on me. And so it starts out and it's we found a post of a girl, and she said, I'm about to taste Dave's Hot Chicken for the first time, and she tastes it and she goes, oh my gosh. And then the music comes in and says, something's got a hold on me. Yeah, it must be love.
Well, a lot has changed in advertising in 50 years. Yeah, that's about right. Wow. So how do you keep up?
You know, the tech the technology changes, people don't change. They're looking for that new taste, that new thing, that's something, or they're looking for the memory of something wonderful, like, you know, mom's special soup. It's always there's always something, or they're looking for convenience, or they're looking for speed, or there are all these things about advertising. In the 80s, we did a campaign for Wiener Schnitzel. And at that point, Wiener Schnitzel really specializes in hot dogs. But they brought out at that time, they say, hey, they came to me and they said, well, we're gonna introduce hamburgers. Big thing for them, We're gonna have hamburgers, have fries, all of these kind of things. Hamburger and so my creative group and I got together and we thought about it and thought, the hot dog has a double meaning, like hot dog skiers and hot dog basketball, people can dribble behind their back and that kind of thing. And so we actually hired a very celebrity, he was like a celebrity baseball player at the time, Reggie Jackson, who was he was going for his 500th home run and everything. But he was very, he was a real showman. And so we had him there and he's saying, I'm not just a hot dog anymore. And then suddenly we were in there were different basketball players and so on, skiers, and they were going, we're not just a hot dog anymore. And then we got inside the Wiener Schnitzel with the crew, and they're all going, we're not just a hot dog anymore. We're hamburgers, shakes, all of those things. And we really opened up a lot of business for them. So that's news. News is always important. If you have something new, people want to know about it.
And if something new has to do with food, then people especially want to know about it.
Yeah, that's right. There's got to be a reason. If they've tried you, you want to give them a reason to try you again. And you also want to reassure them so that they come back.
So it's all food and advertising, it's all psychology, connecting with people?
I think it's identifying those needs and wants, that's really it. I mean, people need to eat, but they want something special.
I will agree with that one. And what about you? What is your earliest food memory?
My grandmother, she made cribiness. She did everything by hand. And she would bring home a chicken and she would skin it and she'd take the skin and and I would sit in the kitchen with her and everything. And I must have been 3 or 4, and so on. And she'd slice it and then she would fry it. And then she'd put some kosher salt on it and she'd give it to me. And it was just like amazing. And then here's a little secret I will share only with your audience.
Okay.
She would put the grimanas inside the matzo ball, so it was a surprise to you. You wouldn't expect to be there, and yet there it is.
So you grew up, you didn't grow up here, you grew up in Chicago?
I grew up in Iowa. My dad was working in oh golly, I don't know how big the town was. It could have been 25,000 in eastern Iowa. And that's where I was born. But basically, when people ask me where I'm from, and I say Des Moines, even though I lived all over. I lived in Sioux City. We moved a lot. And then after I got out of the service, I taught at a couple of colleges and small, liberal arts colleges, 4-year liberal arts colleges, one in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and one in Denison, Iowa. But basically, I'm from Des Moines, and my roots go back there, and I have a daughter living there, and I have grandchildren there. So, and it's a very close knit, Jewish community. So you really you really stick together. You want sure. I always had a talent for art. I won all kinds of art contests and so on in junior high and high school. And I had a tremendous flair for writing. I would write poetry and, short stories. Um, and Iowa had something called, I forget what they're called, but they're aptitude tests, and you got them in high school. And it showed I was like 99% in art and 98% in writing and English and then 97% in persuasion. Well, that tells you something. But I still didn't, my first ad I did in 1956. It was my dad he was an executive at a furniture store. And he had me come in and I did an ad for carpeting. I think it was like $1.20 a yard at that time. But that was the first ad I ever did. But I never didn't connect that with the commercials. We had commercials by then. They might have been black and white, but we had commercials. And but I didn't know who did those. To me, advertising was one in the newspaper. So when I went to college, I started as an architecture student. Well, that was too much work. I switched to industrial design. And then I switched to straight painting. And then I switched to creative writing. And then I found out that since I had changed majors every semester, I couldn't go on. I was at the University of Illinois by that time. I found out that the Journal School had a major in advertising, and all you needed was 60 credit hours. And it didn't matter what they were in because I had them in everything, including trigonometry. So I switched to advertising, and I graduated with an advertising degree. I also graduated in as a lieutenant in the U.S. Army because I stayed in ROTC. And I this is classic. I trained in field artillery because I wanted a combat arm, but they saw that I took trigonometry, so they changed me to air defense missiles. So then I was training with missiles, and then I got a telegram. We had telegrams then, and it said, because of your civilian education and advertising, you are hereby reported, you are ordered on completion of your missile commander's course to report to the Special Warfare Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to join the 1st Psychological Operations Battalion. And I found myself in PsyOps because of the advertising background. And you know what? We did it. And they put me in charge of a graphic section. Since there was a draft, and I had top artists I had illustrators from New York and top copywriters. And we did mainly we did leaflets, to drop on. And it was a nice thing to do because they were mainly safe conduct passes, so take this leaflet and surrender. And so my job was to get the, get get the enemy off the battlefield without having to waste any ammunition. And so
You fought them with paper.
I fought it. I said if anybody ever got hurt, it's because the bundles they didn't untie and spread all over the place. But um, but on top of that, we found ourselves doing the bulletins and the ads for, there would be a base. We would have there would be like a community playhouse, and of course we would do the menus and the placemats for the general's wife's Thanksgiving dinner, and but it was really a lot of fun, and we did a lot of good, and we did a lot of work that I still am not supposed to talk about for all around, but it was interesting. PsyOps was a really interesting background, but when I got out, I decided I talked to my friends who had gone right into advertising, and they had like what to me sounded like kind of they were doing like catalog copy. And I thought, wow, I've been doing all of this stuff all around the world, and it's really been very exciting. How am I supposed to do that? It was also a time when there was a lot of, I guess you describe anti-materialism. So advertising was not well thought of. So I decided to return to my art roots, and a Master of Fine Arts. And printmaking and painting. I had some work that went into museums, and I started teaching. I became an art professor, and I headed up an art department because I had that leadership training from the Army. But then after just a few years, my students, because I taught some advertising classes too, so that had gone into advertising, writing me and saying, "Oh, thank you so much. I loved your advertising course. And now I'm just finishing up a commercial in London. I'm in Hollywood, and I just shot a commercial." And I thought, wait a minute, I'm in this little town in Oslo, and these kids are having a lot more fun than I am. So I swallowed my pride. And because by then my friends who had been working in catalog copy were actually at big agencies and so on. And one of them was the Leo Burnett company in Chicago. And my wife, she called. I was too shy to call him, and she said, "You got to help Marie." So he got me an interview there. And I'll tell you I'll tell you how I got the job. Can I tell you that? It wasn't food. It was for United Airlines. But I was sitting in the office in the interview, and the copy art team came in, and they were working on an ad. It was to try to get people to fly. United had the route from Miami to LA, and but from Tampa, Florida, you had to get from Tampa to Miami to get the United flight, and so that was served by Delta. So they had ads like when you now you can fly United to from Miami to LA, or there's a way to fly, or with code share you can go in, kind of like that. And I went home and I wrote this headline. It said, "Next time you want to get to Los Angeles, do United a favor, take Delta." And so that was the connection. And the guy hired me. The creative director hired me, and 3 years later, I was made a vice president and associate creative director, and then I became creative director. And I've basically been a creative director since. So that would be like 73, 74, 75.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite the career.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then when I came out to LA, that's when I started working on so I worked there in Kellogg, on Wiener Schnitzel. And then we merged with Young Rubicam, and I became creative director of an office that was tied in with we were a joint venture with Dentsu, which was the biggest Japanese agency and probably the fourth biggest in the whole world. And Young and Rubicam was very big, and we also then did a joint venture with Havas. So I was either going to France to Cannes for the advertising festival, or they do an ad festival there too. Yeah, and or to Japan or to the Far East. But that meant from Y&R, I started working on KFC. Then there was Nissin Cup of Noodles. So did several spots for them. House Foods. Oh, going back to Burnett, yeah, I'd already worked on Nestle there, worked on Taster Choice. I introduced Taster's Choice decaffeinated coffee. And our line then was, if you didn't know the difference, you couldn't taste the difference. I worked on, they had a cheese division at Nestle called West Pride. And they had a sandwich spread with cheese, in the line I came up with West Pride cheese spread. The best thing the best thing to happen since sliced bread. Once I went out on my own, I went in with a couple of guys, and then I really started getting a lot of food business. Hamburger Hamlet, remember that? We won the national restaurant news top radio commercial of in fact, I think it was best of show of everything when we were with that. And then we started working for Noah's Bagels, which we introduced in LA when they were really starting, and which was perfect for me. And my line for Noah's, it was all authenticity. And that these were the real bagels. And so everyone else was talking about fresh bagels, and I said, our bagels are 90 years old. And Noah loved that. And then from New York to LOX, instead of LAX. And because of Noah's, then I had other companies come to me, and we did Wetzel's Pretzels forever. We did all they're still showing the work, what they have up in the stores, the design and everything. That's still what I set for Wetzel's Pretzels. And we had some fun. When they came out with the pretzel dog, we wrote the dog that makes people beg. And that's fun. And then Starbucks called, because it all came from Noah's. I met Howard Schultz, and when we opened in Seattle, and he just loved the stuff that we were doing for Noah's. And when Noah's got bought, and Starbucks called and said that. So we went to work, and we did the entire expansion for Starbucks in Arizona, Nevada, and all California. So we opened up 3 stores a week for 4 years. It was a phenomenal ride. And now here I am working on Dave's Hot Chicken. I recommend it to everyone. So there you go.
So I'm pretty sure anybody who's watching or listening has seen your advertising. They just don't
Well,
necessarily know it, and now they do. Okay, so all of us working with food, do you like to cook too?
yes,
Do you have a recipe you'd like to share?
I can share one with you. It's so quick, but it's really a favorite of mine, and I'm sure you're familiar with matzo Brei, and I'm sure our viewers are too. So I call this Mexican matzo Brei. When you get to the end of, if you've been snacking on the taco chips, and you get to the end of that, and there's all those little broken pieces and everything, just like you do with matzah, pick up a handful, run them under water, throw them in a bowl, break some eggs over them, stir it all up, and scramble it. and you can serve it with sour cream, or you can serve it with I admit to non-fat yogurt, plain yogurt, Greek yogurt, and salsa, and you can put a couple of pieces of avocado with it. You can serve it on top of a tortilla, and it's fast, it's easy, and it's a great breakfast surprise for two people.
Wonderful. Where can people learn more about you, Murray?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, yeah, and I wrote a novel, so you can find that on Amazon. I think I haven't looked for a while, but it's called Love in Paris, and it's really based on a production trip that I did in Europe. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, Murray. It's been such an awesome education. I really appreciate it. Thank you for tuning into Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube and or your favorite podcast platform. And you can go to jewishjournal.com/podcast to read the articles and get recipes. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com.
thank you.
Thank you. Until next time, bon appetit.